Yes, you guys read the title right. I'm going to be talking about why, brain rot and, bad attention span has been hurting gaming. And I'm going to talk about why that's been the case recently because let's just say how games have been made have been kind of, been leaning into the brain rot and all that and, just the less attention span and all that type of stuff. And well, I'm gonna use a great example, and it's gonna be Call of Duty. Alright, and of course, it won't just be Call of Duty that, has these issues, kind of showing why people have terrible attention spans and, brain rot and all that. And why I mention Call of Duty is because, well, with people with terrible attention spans and, with all the brain rot and all that, a great, example I can use is Call of Duty because I have played a lot of Call of Duty and I have experienced the Call of Duty brain rot. And it's the fact that, people don't like to work together. They like to go fast paced and move all crazy and kind of have a bunch of stuff happening on the screen, and people don't like to take their time and stuff. And like, it really kind of makes it look wild to see all these super sweats because just because they can move fast, they get to do all this crazy movement and stuff. And just, if there's no crazy movement, people can't play it. Like, people actually will get bored, which is absolutely insane to me. But it happens. People get bored, and you know, that's a bit of an issue because if people can't like find any enjoyment or entertainment from a fast-paced game, then especially like a multiplayer game, people are never gonna play single-player games, and that also is another reason why gaming is being hurt by all this because gaming isn't just online multiplayer. Gaming is also single-player games, story mode, all this other stuff, and people obviously want to have the attention span or, just the what am I trying to say here? The patience. That's what I'm trying to say. The patience to play through all these kinds of games. People feel like they can't play any other games outside of Call of Duty. FIFA, Madden, or 2K, or even Fortnite. Because even Fortnite now, like, I mean, I gotta say, like, it is super fast paced. And there's a bunch of, like, colorful, bright colors and stuff going on. And, there's a bunch of, emotes and, skins, bunch of effects, bunch of stuff in the game. And, like, right now, a lot of people, like, will play these kinds of games. Even Warzone, like, there's a bunch of skins. And as long as they're bright and colorful or they're based on specific IPs, people will buy it. And I feel like also that's another reason why, gaming is also being hurt by all this stuff is that people, will think, oh yeah, let me just buy a skin that will do literally nothing and spend money. And, obviously developer teams will see this and be like, hey, I'm gonna just keep making skins instead of fixing the issues, which Call of Duty is a very great example of that because recently, I don't know if you guys have seen, but they're adding Beavis and Butthead skins to Call of Duty, and instead of fixing the issues. And right now, all people care about is going super crazy on the Omni movement, going super fast paced, you know, having short attention spans. You know what I'm saying? Like right now, even Search and Destroy, like people, if you're not playing like Respawn, you'll play Search and Destroy and you're spectating teammates and they're like spinning everywhere and moving like crazy. You go making the screens go crazy. You could tell, the brain rot's got to them, right? And also back to what I was saying about single player games, people will not have the patience or the attention span to play through these single player games, which is very sad because there's a lot of great single player games. Well, let me tell you, a lot of great single player games. I mean, gaming as a whole really like started off as single player gaming. That's how everything started off. That's how things have always been. And obviously with multiplayer gaming, if there's not a bunch of flashing stuff or a bunch of colorful things or a bunch of crazy movement, people will just not play it and will get bored because obviously you see a game like, X Defiant, that's a great example of a game that has pretty great design, pretty good gameplay, but it's not fast paced, you don't kill people instantly, you're not able to do some crazy movement, people are not going to play it. And there's a lot of games with a lot of potential out there, that just end up, getting screwed because of this kind of stuff. And it kind of sucks because, I mean, there's a lot of great games out there. You know what I'm saying? Like right now, Splitgate 2, that came out recently. Apparently that's like really popular because it's like a mix of Halo and Portal, and I guess kind of like they have like abilities, so it's kind of like I guess Black Ops in a way. Like some of the newer ones with well, not newer ones, but some of the ones with specialist abilities. And that game, you can put portals down. It's fast paced. You can also you have a jetpack, so you're flying everywhere. It's super bright and colorful. Like obviously that's gonna get the attention of people, but anyways, like, stuff like that, right, will come out and people will, play it because obviously it looks colorful, bright, and all that. And I understand, right, having a game be colorful and bright, understandable. But I think with specific games, having a more gritty, more darker tone would look better too. But it also just depends on the kind of game, right? Like, say you're playing Call of Duty, right? You're playing, I don't know, like World War II. Obviously, you expect the game to be, not super colorful and bright and to be dark and gritty, you know. But obviously people won't play it because, well, there's no bright colors and stuff, you know? Even though, I feel like if there's any bright colors to be had in the game, at least it should be, like, the final, like, camo, whatever, that you unlock, right? Like, the Dark Matter equivalent camo. But anyways, like I said, though, like, this is definitely a major issue because, obviously, like I said, the thing that gets hurt the most are single-player games. Like, there's a lot of great single-player games, like, like Spider-Man, God of War, The Last of Us. There's definitely more. It's just I can't think of any, but those are some of the ones that I can think of. Let me just think a sec. I mean, there's also platformers, There's like Mario, Crash Bandicoot, a bunch of other stuff. But, I just feel like people just don't have the attention span to play some of these games, and that's kind of a bit of an issue because like I said, it just hurts these games because obviously these games should definitely be a lot more popular, a lot more praised, but people just can't, play games after getting so used to playing fast-paced stuff like Call of Duty, where you're just running back and forth, dying, spawning in, or you're playing search, you're just full pushing people, and I feel like as a whole, just, I mean, people just expect more. I guess we'll not expect more, but also get used to how bad gaming can be, like the quality of games. So people are always like so used to unfinished products, and they're like, oh, they'll just update it, as long as it's here now. And it's like, no, like these people don't understand that back in the day, games were more complete, and we didn't have to wait for updates and all that. And people are just okay with an unfinished product coming out as long as there's some crazy movement or super fast gameplay. They don't care, and that's not a good thing, and people will still just support these kind of things and just eat all of this up because, as long as it's fast paced and it'll, kind of satisfy, their needs of, just wanting to go fast and having a bunch of stuff going on the screen. To get a ton of dopamine because obviously, with these faster paced games, obviously some people are going to receive more dopamine and they're going to, like that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, those are just some things I wanted to talk about because, like I said, this kind of stuff really does affect gaming negatively. And, you know, obviously with people still supporting these kinds of games, these unfinished products, these terrible games, you know, gaming will not evolve into something better because obviously everyone will still just keep buying the next Call of Duty and, just playing all these kind of stuff or, not moving on to story mode games or not supporting specific games, even though they should. But I do gotta say though, speaking of everyone buying the next Call of Duty, honestly, the way things are going, in terms of Call of Duty, I don't think people will actually buy this next one. I'm not gonna lie with you guys. I honestly think this time people will realize that they probably shouldn't um, be buying the next Call of Duty because I think it's gone up to a point where people have definitely, gotten tired of Call of Duty because I think a big reason is that, Call of Duty comes out every single year. So, I think people are finally starting to wake up and realize that, hey, maybe this, game coming out every single year is not a good thing, especially nowadays when these games are a lot better bitter, bigger, you know, a lot, you know, more effort to make, a lot more money is involved. You know, I feel like nowadays, you know, these companies that release games yearly, which is, I guess, only Call of Duty, uh, should definitely, you know, take a step back and definitely take their time because, you know, gaming has changed as a whole. People do not want a new game every single year anymore, you know? Like, don't get me wrong, you know, people love these games, but I think people as a whole have gotten tired of it, especially with how bad quality these games have become. So I absolutely understand where these people are coming from. So it looks like people might not be buying the new Call of Duty, which is it's a great thing. So, yeah, I don't know. But then again, you know, I feel like a bunch of people will still buy the game, but we'll see what happens. You know, I don't know what's really gonna happen, but you know, only time will tell. Let me just put this away. Hell yeah. There we go. Alright. But yeah. Like I said, you know, that's all I want to talk about in this video. Just, you know, how brain rot and, you know, attention span really does affect gaming negatively. And, you know, I just gave you guys some examples. Of course, there's a lot, probably a lot more that goes into it. You know, you could probably find a video that explains things in a lot more detail and uses better examples. But yeah. Anyways, that's gonna be for this video, though, you guys. If you guys make this far into the video, I hope all of you guys enjoyed. And thank you all for listening. And, you know, before I go, I would also appreciate it if you guys left a like and a comment on this video. It'd mean a lot if you supported the channel. But, yeah. Anyways, I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye, guys.